Now, whether you're here in person or watching at home, we have an exciting program planned to celebrate and close out Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I'm Howard O, and I serve as the Associate Director in the White House Office of Public Engagement, and it is my honor to be your host for this event. And we here at Public Engagement are honored to co-host this event with the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders Initiative, and our partners, the U.S. Department of Interior, who is generously hosting us in their space today, along with the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center. Let's give them a round of applause. So this month's and this program's theme is Building Legacy Together, our community's journey of strength and resilience. And today, we reflect upon the legacies that have been built and that we're building upon in our everyday work, from public service and leadership to arts and culture. And our hashtag for today is hashtag AANHPI Legacy. So for those that want to tweet away. We look forward to many social media posts. But I would be remiss if I did not start this program by saying our hearts are broken following the unspeakable murder of 19 children and 2 teachers this week in Uvalde, Texas. It is unconscionable that events like this continue to happen in our country, and in the aftermath of the Buffalo and Laguna Woods shootings, we know Americans and communities everywhere are scared and hurting. And we simply want you to know that we are here with you in this moment of tragedy. As President Biden said on Tuesday, tonight there are parents who will never see their child again, parents who will never be the same. To lose a child is to have a piece of your soul ripped away forever. And I ask the nation to pray for them and to give them strength through the darkness. Thank you for joining us and asking for strength for everyone impacted by these horrific events. The President is also committed in taking action to stop more of these atrocities from happening. On Tuesday, he also said this: as a nation, we must ask, when in God's name will we stand up to the gun lobby? And when in God's name will we do what needs to be done? I'm sick and tired of it, and we have to act. So we encourage you to continue to raise your voices on these issues, and please know we are eager to partner to stem the tide of gun violence that has ravaged too many communities and too many families in our country. Now, back to the program. So, with that, we are excited because we have a special opening hula performance by A Cultural Center. A Hawaiian Cultural Center is a nonprofit Hawaiian cultural organization based in Alexandria, Virginia, working to preserve and perpetuate the vibrancy of the native Hawaiian people and culture. And with that, A Cultural Center, please come to the stage.
Hiki puno me ke aloha, aloha.
How was that, everybody? Another round of applause. What a great way to start a market for our program, correct? Thank you so much for the performance. And without further ado, let me introduce our next amazing speaker, our keynote, Ambassador Catherine Tai. Ambassador Catherine Tai, round of applause. That works. That's good. Well, Ambassador Catherine Tai was sworn in as the 19th United States Trade Representative on March 18, 2021. As a member of the President's Cabinet, Ambassador Tai is the principal trade advisor, negotiator, and spokesperson on the U.S. trade policy. She also serves as co-chair of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and the President's Advisory Commission. Prior to her unanimous Senate confirmation, Ambassador Tai spent most of her career in public service, focusing on international economic diplomacy, monitoring, and enforcement. Without further ado, Ambassador Catherine Tai.
Thank you so much, Howard. And as usual, I got to adjust this downward for 5 foot 2 inches. Good afternoon. Thank you for that kind introduction. It's wonderful to see all of you and in person. Let me begin by thanking the Department of the Interior for hosting today's event in this incredible auditorium. I also want to acknowledge the hard work, the brilliant work of the teams from WIANPI, the Office of Public Engagement, and all of our colleagues and friends who put together so many wonderful AA and NHPI Heritage Month events and programs over these past few weeks. As we have taken this month to celebrate so many important accomplishments from members of the AA and NHPI communities, I have also reflected on my own responsibilities as the first Asian American United States Trade Representative. Thank you. This responsibility was evident even 2 days before I was sworn in by our first Asian American vice president, when a gunman in Atlanta killed 8 people, including 6 women of Asian descent. I began this job just as our communities were reeling from an unprecedented tragedy, in addition to all of the acts of bias and increasing hate against our community over the beginning years of the pandemic. From the beginning, I've had the dual responsibility of advancing President Biden's trade agenda on the world stage and being a voice for our communities in the cabinet. And this is why I'm deeply honored to co-chair the White House Initiative and President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. By reestablishing and expanding the WIANPI, President Biden has made clear that this administration will use the scale and power of the federal government to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for our communities. The initiative provides a forum for us to bring together stakeholders to advise us on how we will fulfill WIANPI's mission, from dismantling language access barriers and expanding the use of disaggregated data to confronting anti-AA and NHPI hate and xenophobia. This initiative is advancing meaningful change. I've long believed that soliciting and incorporating feedback from a wide range of stakeholders is critical to allowing us to create better and more equitable policy outcomes. In both my work as U.S. Trade Representative and as the co-chair of WIANPI, this feedback helps us create more durable, effective, and resilient policies while ensuring that our administration is aligned with the needs of our communities. And that's why one of my priorities as the U.S. Trade Representative is to incorporate meetings with local AA and NHPI leaders into my travel around this country. Whether these conversations occur over a cup of tea or in a community center, it is important to ensure that we are directly incorporating our community's input and connecting our work to their needs at the local level. While these discussions involve trade policy, we also find ourselves talking about our shared priorities and challenges. And I've worked to incorporate these conversations also into WIANPI's work and to make sure that these perspectives are reflected in the policies that we develop together. When I am asked about what it means to be the first Asian American U.S. trade representative, or one of 2 Asian Americans in the cabinet, I think back on these conversations, but I also recognize those who paved the way for people like me, like Secretary Norman Mineta, who we lost earlier this month and who has been very much on my mind. He was the son of Japanese immigrants, and his family was interned in California during World War II. Despite these hardships, Norman Mineta enlisted in the U.S. Army after graduating from UC Berkeley and served as an intelligence officer in Japan and Korea. He rose from the San Jose City Council to the mayor's office, to the halls of the United States House of Representatives. He served for 2 decades and co-founded the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, which remains an integral institution in our legislative branch. And of course, he was the first Asian American to serve in the cabinet, first as President Clinton's Secretary of Commerce, and later as President Bush's Secretary of Transportation. He was also the first chair of what became the WIANPI. We can learn so much from Secretary Mineta's career and legacy. Despite the prejudice he experienced from his own government as a child, his decency and his commitment to justice never wavered, and he remained inspired to serve this country. Time and time again, Secretary Mineta drew upon his personal experience to speak up and speak out against injustice. He refused to stand on the sidelines when human dignity of any kind was being challenged. Even when he made history in joining the president's cabinet, he didn't settle for being the first. As Secretary of Transportation after September 11, he oversaw the creation of the Transportation Security Administration and our modern aviation security policies. He inspired a generation of young AA and NHPI leaders, myself included. If there is one part of his legacy that I want to really underscore, it is to pass on the legacy of mentorship, resilience, and principled service. I often reflect on the beginning of my career in public service many years ago when I was hired as a litigator at the USTR by the general counsel at the time, Warren Maruyama. Warren is a practiced and wizened trade lawyer, and he helped guide me through my first stint at USTR as a trade litigator. But Warren has also been an outstanding mentor and model in ensuring that the faces of the federal government represent all the communities of our nation. And this is a practice that I strive to continue and expand in leading our agency. And as the first Asian American to hold this position, I want to make the path to success easier and more passable for those who will follow in these footsteps. As we reflect on our legacy and the seeds that we are planting for a better future for the country and all of our people, I want to thank each one of you for the long days, the hard work, and the sacrifices that I know you and your families are making on behalf of a grateful nation. As AA and NHPI Heritage Month comes to a close and our work continues, I am so glad that we have an opportunity to celebrate ourselves and each other. I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve alongside all of you and our dynamic, committed colleagues across the Biden-Harris administration to fulfill the mission of a more just and equitable society. And I am now pleased to introduce the Department of the Interior's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Insular and International Affairs, Keone Nakoa. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Tai. Needless to say, you are a true inspiration to us all. Now, I'll introduce our co-organizer for this event, representing the Department of Interior, Keone Nakoa, who serves as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Insular and International Affairs. Keone.
Aloha ahi ahi kākou. Velina Mai, welcome to the Department of the Interior, this beautiful building in our main interior building. We're, on behalf of Secretary Holland, we are so happy to welcome everyone to this building, and I apologize on behalf of the Secretary for her not being able to be here herself. Just to give a quick Hawaiian introduction, o ke one na koa ko uinoa, ua hanau ia au na nuuanu, ano kahana a me keanai ko'u ohana, which translates to aloha, my name is Keone Nakoa, and I hail from the valley of Nu'uanu, and my family is from Kahana and Keanai on the islands of in the island of Maui. I'm honored to represent DOI and Secretary Holland at the closing ceremony in honor of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month. As a Native Hawaiian and also as a Chinese and Korean and person of European ancestry as well, this month has always been very personal and meaningful to me. Before I joined the administration, President Biden's reestablishment, expansion, and prioritization of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders was such a welcome, momentous occasion for me. When I finally joined this administration, I was so excited to be able to be a part of the work that WIAMPI was doing as their interagency implementation team, as one of the representatives for the Department of the Interior. It is just such a supporting and momentous thing for President Biden and Vice President Harris to be able to support Native Hawaiians, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders in this way. It's so important that diversity and representation be a part of this government, and that the government look like the people that it governs. So with that, I'm so thrilled to be here on behalf of the Interior and to welcome everyone here. And we'll thank you so much, Crystal, for all your work, and Erica. Mahalo nui.
Thank you so much, Keone, for not only speaking, but also for hosting us in your space today. You have a spectacular team here at Interior. Now, next, allow me to introduce my dear friend, Crystal Kai, Executive Director of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, otherwise known as WIAMPI, and the President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Let's give a warm aloha welcome to Crystal.
Aloha mai kako, and happy Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. As Howard mentioned, my name is Crystal Ka'ai, and I'm proud to be the Executive Director of both the White House Initiative and President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And thank you to each and every one of you who have joined us in person here today, as well as all who are tuning in virtually from across the country as we close out what has been a very exciting and jam-packed Heritage Month. From day one of the Biden-Harris administration, advancing equity has been at the heart of this administration's work to build our country back better. And as a part of that commitment, last May, President Biden signed Executive Order 14031 to reestablish the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and to also reauthorize the creation of the President's Advisory Commission on AA and NHPIs. And both entities are charged with driving an ambitious whole-of-government response to advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for our AA and NHPI communities. And reflecting on the past year and seeing all of the incredible work being done by community leaders and federal partners across the country, it is clear that we are collectively working toward that equitable future that we all dreamed of. And as I look around this room, I am filled with tremendous pride and hope. Despite how challenging the past 2.5 years have been, our communities have emerged more united and resilient than ever before. And over the past year, we have worked tirelessly to reinvigorate the work of this initiative and the Commission to address the multitude of challenges our communities have faced. This includes tackling both the immediate crises that have been exacerbated throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, from addressing health inequities that have taken a disproportionate toll on our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities, to addressing the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on our small businesses and our workers and families. We know, unfortunately, too, we have seen over the past 2.5 years a really horrific surge in anti-Asian violence and hate, and that is something that this administration and our initiative are deeply committed to addressing. We've also been working hard to address longstanding issues that have long plagued our communities, including the need for greater data disaggregation and language access. And we are continuing to reinvigorate the work to rebuild trust in communities and between the federal government through our outreach and engagement. Through our work, we are quite literally building the very future that many of us have envisioned for decades, and this is only just the beginning. Despite the challenges of the past 2.5 years, the energy, momentum, and commitment from our communities has not only made the work we are doing in this administration possible, but also builds on the tremendous legacy of those who have come before us so that we can create a better future, not just for our generation, but for generations to come. The theme of this year's AA and NHPI Heritage Month is Building Legacy Together, our community's journey of strength and resilience. And given the times that we are living in, the challenges that we have overcome, and those that we are continuing to face fearlessly, this theme is particularly poignant. Amidst a global pandemic, an economic downturn, and a surge in racism and xenophobia targeting communities who look like us, our communities have continued to find light and come together in unprecedented ways to build not just community, but also to feel hope and to take action. It is because of the AA and NHPI leaders here today and across the country that we have emerged more resilient than ever. And it's important to acknowledge that our ability to look to the future with such optimism is a product of the work and dedication of those who have come before us. And this includes giants like trailblazing Secretary Norman Mineta, who sadly passed away earlier this month. Many of us are still grieving from the tremendous hole in our hearts that we have from this really significant loss. And Ambassador Tai did a lovely job of highlighting the many firsts that the Secretary was able to pursue for our community. In fact, he has built so much of the infrastructure at the national level that exists for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community today, including serving as our first chair of the White House Initiative and President's Advisory Commission under the Clinton administration. So we are deeply indebted to him and forever grateful for his tremendous legacy. We know that it'll continue to live on through all of us and the work that we will continue to do in his honor and in his memory. So with that, I will be cueing a video, just a short tribute video to highlight the legacy of Secretary Norman Mineta.
I am talking about the amazing Secretary Norman Mineta, who devoted his career to public service. For all of those who knew Norm, he worked tirelessly to make our nation stronger, safer, and more just. And in so doing, he inspired a generation of leaders, including me.
As you all know, Norm was born in 1931 in San Jose, California, an immigrant to immigrant parents from Japan. As an 11-year-old, he spent 3 years in an incarceration camp among 120,000 Japanese Americans across the country. But with every reason to be angry and resentful, Norm chose to believe in himself, to believe in America, and to believe in his country. He served in the United States Army, elected the first Asian American mayor of a major city, his hometown, San Jose. Elected and served 2 decades as a congressman. We spent a lot of time together and traveled together. Then Norm became the first American of Asian descent to serve as a cabinet secretary. Norm passed away earlier this month, as we all know, days after I signed a bill into law naming the U.S. Department of Transportation headquarters in his honor. And I want to tell you, he was one hell of a man. So let's all follow the power of Norm's example.
And finally, to quote then, a great American, Norm Mineta, I quote, "If we will act together, then we are strong enough to withstand any evil, internal or external, that threatens to unravel," and this is key, "this beautiful tapestry that is America."
Next, it is my pleasure to introduce Erica Moritsugu, who will serve as the moderator for our upcoming panel. Erica's robust history in government service includes serving as the Assistant Secretary for Congressional and Intergovernmental Relations at the Department of Housing and Urban Development during the Obama administration, as well as acting as the first ever Senate Deputy Legislative Director at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. In April of 2021, President Biden appointed Erica to serve as Deputy Assistant to the President and our first ever AA and NHPI senior liaison based in the White House Chief of Staff's office, where she currently supports the administration's priorities and meaningfully engages with AA and NHPI communities across the country. So we have a really incredible panel lined up. It's my pleasure to bring Erica and our panelists to the stage.
Aloha, y'all. Happy Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I am honored to convene this distinguished panel of friends and colleagues, none of whom are strangers to public service, but it's my honor to try to probe a little bit and surface a little bit about their call to service in honor of celebrating the vibrancy of our representation here in this wonderful administration that we serve in. First, I'd like to introduce John Tien. He's our Deputy Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He's the first Asian American to ever serve in this position, and he, again, is no stranger to public service, having served for 24 years as an officer in the United States Army and as a veteran of the Obama administration. Next, we have Nani Koloretti, Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget. She is a friend and a colleague from Hawaii. So aloha, Nani. She serves in senior official positions at HUD, the Department of Treasury, and the City and County of San Francisco. And fun fact, she's my old boss from the Obama administration. So we're going to be really nice to her. Or I will, at least. Next, we have Gautam Raghavan, who's Assistant to the President and Director of the White House Office of Presidential Personnel. He is actually the one that I would normally ask for this stat, but he won't tell me. But I do believe that he is the highest ranking South Asian to ever serve in the West Wing. And since people are policy and data drives us, I will confirm that later. Off the record. He was previously working presidential appointments on the Biden-Harris transition team, and his public service includes serving as Chief of Staff to Representative Pramila Jayapal and serving in the Obama administration in various outreach roles. And last but not least, we have Rohini Kozuglu, who's Deputy Assistant to the President and Domestic Policy Advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. That deserves 2 whoops. Rohini was Senior Advisor to the Vice President-elect on the Biden-Harris transition and served as the first ever South Asian Chief of Staff in the Senate when Senator Kamala Harris was a senator. So welcome to our panel. And now we'll start with a little bit of a dialogue so that we can learn a little bit and be inspired and sparked and reminded about what Heritage Month is about for us. I do thank you all for taking the time to join us in this celebration and sharing your wisdom with this audience, both live and online. It's wonderful to be hybrid. Someday we're going to be fully three-dimensional with each other. These hundreds of fellow colleagues and the federal government, many of whom are of Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander descent, I know that they're excited to hear from you, so let's get right to it. Deputy Secretary, and to the rest of the panel, if we could do a round robin about your journey to this service, whether it's personal or professional. I'd love to just open the hot mic to y'all to share out with what you think would be valuable for this moment of celebration.
I'll go ahead and start. And I appreciate the question, Erica. I appreciate everybody hosting us here. It's a really incredible event here at the end of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month, Heritage Month. I know we all have our different stories, but there's a reason we tell our stories, because this is an opportunity to really show up and represent, and not just represent to this community, to our community, but really to represent to other communities as well, so that they understand that we may be Asian, we may be Native Hawaiian, we may be Pacific Islanders, but we are Americans. And the reason that the way I found my myself to public service. I would like to say that it was super organic and that I woke up one day as a high school sophomore in Southern California and said, hey, I want to go into public service. But it was really my father, who was an immigrant from mainland China when he was a nationalist Chinese and was basically chased out of mainland China by the communists. And he came to this country, and when I was born in Connecticut, and he said to me when we were lifting weights, he was a college football player, he was a high school football player, and he had a big barbell over my neck, and he said, where do you think about going to college? And I go, will the answer matter whether you're going to spot me or not? He said, not entirely, but let's see if you get the answer right. And he recommended I go to West Point, I go to the United States Military Academy, and ultimately I did go to West Point really out of an obligation to the nation, an obligation to the country that really put our family into the United States of America, that made me an American. But I will tell you, after 4 years, I realized that I went in as an obligation, but I really left realizing it was a privilege to serve. And then eventually the Army, and then 3 different tours in the Clinton, Bush, and Obama administrations brought me to this position as Deputy Secretary. Thanks.
Deputy Secretary, thank you for your service. Your dad would be proud. Nani?
Sure. Is this on? Yay. Hello, everybody. It's just an honor to be here. I cannot believe we are wrapping up the first ever Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I say first ever because we've added Native Hawaiian to that title, and that is just so amazing that that is there. I say I grew up in Hawaii, so it's personal to me, and I just am so grateful to Erica's work and Crystal Ka'ai's work and everybody in the White House. This administration is amazing. I'll just say briefly, I grew up in Hawaii, and I come from a long line of people who gave service in one way or another. My grandparents came from the Philippines, and my grandfather was a minister. He was a Protestant minister. He created a church there in Hawaii. But he also became a union organizer and organized the Filipinos into their union as they worked in the sugarcane fields. And my grandmother was one of the first Filipina-American nurses in this country. So long line of service. My mom was a child care provider, and I'm the second of 5 girls. And so we grew up in Hawaii without a lot of resources, but we were in Hawaii, which was an amazing community to be in. The expectation was always that I would go to college. No one ever asked me with a barbell over my neck. That did not happen. But I really wanted to go, and I wanted to major in economics, and at the time I thought I wanted to go to Wall Street. But when I was at college, I realized what I really wanted to do was help other people who didn't have opportunities, because it really seemed apparent to me that there were a lot of people that belonged in college with me that didn't make it there. So that's really was my call to serve, and as I like to say to people, I walk in the numbers door. So this tour of duty at Office of Management and Budget is actually the second time at OMB. I started my federal career in the Office of Management and Budget in the career rank as a presidential management intern. They call them PMFs now. And that really, it was a while ago, it was the Clinton years, and just had such an amazing time there, but left federal service to go and work in local government, where I worked for about 10 years, and then brought all of those learnings back. I was in the city and county of San Francisco to the Obama administration. So this is my 3rd administration, just like John here, that I'm serving in, and it's just been an incredible journey and just an amazing way to give back to the public.
Thank you, Deputy Director. For those of us who've had 3 tours with 3 different presidents, we obviously started when we were like 12 years old, so. Gautam?
Sure. So I think my call to public service started in the summer of 2003. I was here as an intern, and 2 things happened at the same time. One was I came out as gay, and the second thing is we were in the midst of a national debate on same-sex marriage. And so for me, coming out, I like to say, was my first political act, and it felt very much that what was political was personal. And so the next summer I graduated from college, and I was like, I got to move to DC and change the world. So I got my start working on campaigns, did a bunch of other different things. But I think the thing that really drew me to the position I'm in now in the Presidential Personnel Office, and I want to shout out my colleagues Linda Shim and Jim Cho, who are here from PPO. Hey, PPO team. I think the thing that really drew me to this job was the 6 years I spent in the Obama administration, first at the Pentagon and then at the White House, and seeing the change that happened for the LGBTQ community, for the AA NHPI community, and seeing how so much of that was driven by our appointees, by people who were in their seats in the agencies, whose jobs may not have been to work necessarily on community issues, but who brought their stories and narratives and expertise and talent and creativity to the job every day. And that's why we say in PPO that people are policy. And that's why I feel very lucky to have this job where we get to bring such amazing people into the administration.
Thank you, Gautam.
So for me, I think like everybody, well, I just wanted to say at the top, a lot of people, when you go sit on a panel, they read through your biography and it sounds like it was all choreographed to lead you to the job that you have today. But I think I speak for almost everybody, and usually when I'm on a panel, and I can say that none of us would have planned to necessarily be in the jobs that we're sitting up here doing. And hopefully that gives people some inspiration that there is no specific path and way to do anything that we're doing here today. And at the same time, I think that mostly what I want to convey is that it's okay to have not figured out exactly what you're doing. There's a lot of people out there thinking, you know, what is my next job? What should I do with my life? What's my purpose? And I think that it's, you know, part of what you're hearing from all of us is that, you know, at the end of the day, and for me, the ethos that you have, that you bring to these jobs is, I think, the most important thing that helps move this forward. I grew up in New Jersey, and when I say that, people assume that I grew up with a lot of minorities, but that was not the case. And I grew up in a town where, you know, I was probably one of the only people that looked like me other than my younger brother. And so the years that I was trying to make sense of the world, you know, what I found over time and going into college was that I did want to work in environments where I was bringing people into the policymaking process in an inclusive way. For those of you that have been, you know, even in classrooms where you get nervous, like they're about to say my name and I know that the teacher doesn't know how to say it, you know, and you're holding your breath. I think that all of those things lead you to, you know, led me to this public service piece. I was in the Senate for many years before I ended up in the White House, and I was also about to go into the private sector before I met with then Senator Kamala Harris. And Donald Trump had just gotten elected. And so I know that for so many people, they had to rethink exactly what they were planning on doing because, you know, everything that you think that you stand for is then in front of you with a different president than you had expected. And so that's how our my work started with her that led me here.
Thank you, Rohini. Can I toss back to you a little bit for the next question, and we'll go down the line? I'm wondering whether, I mean, because everybody here on this panel sits in different seats with different leverage points and different mission focuses, when we actually execute on the President and the Vice President's longstanding commitment to uplifting and empowering the Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities, what do you find most fulfilling about the role in which you sit?
Sure. So I think, well, I'm particularly very lucky to work for a vice president that has had a lived experience that, you know, is why President Biden picked her in terms of being able to, you know, look around at, you know, the diversity that is America and have a different experience and bring that to the policy-making process. But for me, if I had to look back and think on it, you know, there has been, in the White House, the president and the vice president, every day you're trying to move an agenda forward. And what I think all of us face is when crises happen in the country, things that you're not expecting happen, and things go awry in the plan that you have for the day. And so, you know, when I look back, even just recently when we were celebrating the Apex Gala and, you know, the shooting had just happened in Uvalde that only a few hours before, you know, how do you figure out what to say at what is a planned celebration of Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Month while also giving credence to the fact that, a shooting had just happened. There were elements of hate involved. This is the Asian American community has also faced hate, in their community as well. Where are the things you can lift up and tie in that speak to the community? Trying to help, we only had 20 minutes to revise that speech with her, but those kind of moments where you fully realize that what she is about to say is going to get played live on everything, all the networks, that's a huge responsibility to help shape those things. And so it's a huge honor. In the moment, you don't have time to think about that. But at the same time, those are also moments where, we are going to coalition build as a community and show up and, let other communities know that we stand with them in solidarity. So I think for me, being present in those moments, bringing your own lived experience to the table has been one of the most fulfilling things.
I mean, for us, it's all, oh, sorry, applause for Rowan, please. I stepped on your applause. For us, it's all about the people, right? So about an hour ago, we did a photo with NHPI appointees, and the numbers are just exciting, right? And the diversity, and when we say NHPI, we actually mean it. We actually have the diversity of our community in the rooms, in agencies across the administration. So for us, in PPO, and for me personally, I think that is the best part of the job, is getting to meet so many talented people. And really, it's actually meeting them now, and it's not just seeing names on screens or on Zooms or whatever, but actually getting to interact with one another. And I think I want to share the numbers, because I have numbers, which is to just really make the point that this is an administration, thanks to the president and vice president, that has really taken outreach and inclusion seriously. And if you consider the fact that 15% of our appointees self-identify as NHPI, that is staggering. That is more than any administration in history. Over half of our appointees are women, over half are people of color, 6% identify as disabled, 5% are veterans, 14% are LGBTQ, 1 in 3 is, like me, a naturalized citizen or the child of immigrants. I mean, that kind of rich, interesting diversity and the expertise that all those appointees bring with them is really, for us, the point of the job. So that's what we find, I think, the most rewarding.
After I made fun of you, Gotham. So the Office of Management and Budget, often people think it's where you go to get money, but it's actually it's sort of a cornerstone or in the middle of everything that's happening in government. OMB is about 480 people, and there's somebody most of them are career, by the way, there's somebody in the agency that knows something about every single dollar that is being spent in the government. But there is also a whole host of staff. I was just talking about this with the Deputy Secretary Tien about all of the ways in which we're also trying to operate the government and manage it. And there's a whole host of staff that work on those issues alongside and sometimes completely in conjunction with people who are working on the budget. So it's very exciting to be there, because one of my favorite things to do is to learn. And so I've only been there 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks now, and all I'm doing is talking to people. That's my second favorite, which is just talking to people. I'm sort of like Gautam in 3 dimensions, and learning about what they are doing to help advance all of the various parts of the president's agenda and how they are doing it. So that has been just really fulfilling to me, and in one of my first weeks, I got to work on the funding for Ukraine. So, if you sit back for a minute and think about, have you ever watched something on TV and thought, well, how can I help that? I'm just a person sitting here watching, Zelensky tell us how terrible it is there, and then to come to work on a plan to actually give help to the Ukraine country was really, really incredibly amazing and fulfilling for me. But there's an item like that at OMB every week. So it has just been an incredible job so far.
And Nina, I would absolutely echo the fact that the Office of Management Budget is absolutely the office of management and budget. There's no doubt. And I say that in a little sort of, I can't believe how many times I will say in my various staff meetings is I go, what does OMB want us to do? And I'm not saying it because of the money, although that's honestly a lot of times, but what does OMB want us to do in terms of the management of the United States government? And really, it is about building back better. And all kidding aside, it is, I think, in many ways, the thrust, the sort of intellectual soul behind how we are going to actually make not just government better, but the United States of America better in terms of how we execute the practice of government for the American people. So just remember that when I ask for money the next time that we
It's like he's, yeah, that was amazing.
To answer your question though, Erica, as to, what do we find fulfilling, especially around the broader ideas of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, I think it boils down to, and it's consistent certainly with what everybody else on the panel has said so far, for sure on one part, which is people, and then the other part is policy. So that sounds a little bit sort of wonky, but I'll try to unpack that, the second part. But on the people part, there's a bunch of different ways we could talk about it, but I'll be very specific to the employee associations, that's what we call them in the Department of Homeland Security, or affinity groups, or resource groups, and some of the other departments. And when I first came into DHS, you're always standing on the work and the shoulders of others who have come before you, who've done good things. So we had employee associations, but what I found was it's inconsistent, the amount of support that at the enterprise level that we're providing to the EAs. And I'm not talking about money necessarily, but also outreach, giving them a voice, giving them a platform, providing some what I would call infrastructure support to them as well. And not just AA, NHPI, but I would say all of the different affinity groups. So that's one very practical way that we've been trying to do things. From a policy side, we of course have the Executive Order 14035 that talks about DEIA broadly and the other initiatives. And what we're trying to do at DHS, and if you think about the DHS mission, that with honor, integrity, we will safeguard the American people, our homeland, and our values. When you try to operationalize that through policy, one way to do that is DEI and A. And what we have said is we try to integrate into all of the different things that the Secretary, Mayorkas, and I are trying to do as we really continue to transform and mature a department that is only 19 years old, right? So it's not a startup, but there is still a lot of maturation and a lot of what I would say infrastructure development that can go. And the last thing we're doing on the policy part is we're trying to work it in and making a leading factor in everything we do as in terms of our contracts. And that's both in terms of DI and A, cyber hygiene, and also energy efficiency and climate.
No, I think one of the threads that's common throughout all of the diverse seats that you lead from is that the work is good and it is progressing and it's hard and it's not done yet. And so I really appreciate the chance to celebrate some of the forward lean work and progress that we can mark now and keep toiling through. Again, with the partnership of all of our career colleagues, the mission-driven career colleagues. We celebrated our interagency working group and our regional network this morning, which I think was a really great hallmark of being able to come together and do this work together, even though the work is not yet done. I do think that, when we talk about practicalities, I think that now that we've been sparked with the inspiration of what brings us to this work and what we're driving towards, that our audience might really appreciate some practical advice from our panel about what advice you might have for mid-career folks, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and anybody else who wants to, I don't know, strive for success in the way that we've been able to have the privilege and honor of serving in. And if you don't mind, Gautam, I'm going to start with you. Usually after we do a panel like this, he's mobbed because people want a job. Y'all have a job, which is great. But he's not just the recruiter, he's also the retainer and the moral compass that keeps us in this work. And so if you don't mind, I'll start with you, and then maybe we can go back to the Deputy Secretary and down the line.
Well, I'll start with the most obvious thing is do good work. I know that sounds very obvious, but I think with everything that is at stake right now, the thing that I know so many senior leaders and managers value is folks who, I don't want to say put your heads down, but like who do the work, right, and do it well. And I'll add to that that I think is particularly important in this administration for the president and vice president, that people do their work with decency and kindness and collegiality. I'll reiterate the importance, especially for our appointees, of doing this work in collaboration with career foreign service, civil service, military, if you're at one of the military agencies. I mean, that sort of, when we screen candidates and we look at candidates who are coming in for appointments, the thing we look for the most are collaborativeness. Like, are you going to be the kind of person someone wants to work with on a team? The second thing we look for is intellectual humility, right? People who are really curious about the world, who want to learn something new, who want to learn to do something better. So I think those are just the kinds of general skills that I think are helpful. But I want to say one other thing, and Eric, I was thinking about what you said at the beginning about whether I'm the highest ranking or whatever. I actually don't think I am. I think that's a good thing, right? Because I think there have been many NHPI and South Asian and other appointees in the Obama administration, the Clinton administration, and in this administration. And the thing that strikes me when thinking about advice I have for all of you, and this is a little bit of a cheesy metaphor, but it's a closing ceremony, is about passing the torch. Get it? Passing the torch? Olympics? Closing? Not very good. But this idea of, like, we have to help one another, right? And I think that is what I benefited from, is the mentorship of people like Chris Liu and Tina Chen and Karen Ahuja, who I don't know if she's here or not, who came before and are serving this administration in different capacities. And I think that's what we all need to be called to do, especially as we remember the legacy of people like Secretary Mineta, of expanding our ranks, bringing more people in, helping people out, being a sounding board. So that was a lot to share, but that's where I'll leave it.
Amazing. Thank you.
On the, I'll actually take the torch, even though Gautam had to explain the metaphor. So it's never a good metaphor, you have to explain it. But I'm absolutely going to take advantage of that, of the fact that I loved how you closed, right, which is around obligation, Gautam, right? And that's honestly what I've been saying for the entire month of NHPI Heritage Month. The entire month I've been saying to these communities, the ones who are sitting here on online as well, which is that, and it's to some extent oftentimes preaching to the choir, especially if you're talking to a group like this who have come here on your own proactively, or if you're in the leadership of an employee association or of an affinity group or a readiness group or something of that nature, that you're already there. But this is an opportunity, if the United States government, if the Biden administration is saying, we are going to assemble, we are going to recognize these communities, whether it's this community or other ethnic communities, we are going to recognize this community, then show up. Now, again, I'm speaking to the choir. There's two reasons you want to show up. Number one is, obviously, to be part of the community. The second is to demonstrate, again, to other communities that because of the things that Gautam and PPO and the Biden-Harris administration have been doing, that we have these opportunities, especially as the political appointees, with this color skin, with these shape eyes, with this color hair, that we have this opportunity to say to the rest of America, to other communities, that we are here to be seen, to both be seen and to be heard. And, you know, I agree with all of the teamwork, all of the collaboration things that Gautam was saying, so I'll just build on that a little bit and say, it is, unfortunately, and I say unfortunate because I have one daughter who's an introvert and one daughter who's an extrovert. And I always tell the introvert, I said, we say that this is a world that we respect introverts as much as extroverts, but I will tell you, the way we end up communicating, oftentimes it's the extrovert who ends up getting rewarded, which is unfair. And so you have to be aware that there is the unconscious and conscious bias in terms of ethnic, sexual orientation, and gender, and age and ability, but there's also those conscious, unconscious biases that are applied, I think, generally against introverts. Thanks.
I'll just echo, I just fully agree with what Gautam and what John have said. And I want to kind of double down on one thing, because I noticed I got the 2 minutes left sign, so I want to leave some time for the last answer, which is my tagline is be curious. And what I mean by that is be curious, whatever job you're doing, be curious about the job that you're doing, the goals of that job, whether there's another way to contribute to those goals, but also be curious about the people that you are doing that job with, because that is your network. And it is just, even if you're an introvert, and I am the mother of an introvert, and it's so hard for me to understand, but you can still be curious and learn, even just by listening and watching and continuously asking yourself, what can I do today? What can I learn today? And I would just say that would be my advice to anybody at any stage in their career.
Okay, I got the 1 minute sign left, so I will do my best. But I think I agree with everything everyone has said. You know, I would balance out what Gautam said before about being collaborative with understanding that at the same time, we all come from, many of us from communities where people have been sort of trained for years not to speak up. And that's been something that's been implicit and sent down, signals that, you know, we want to get along with everyone. Many of us came from immigrant families, and so how do we assimilate into this society? And so I do think it is very important to, you know, relationships matter in terms of, you know, having people validate your work and all of those things, but at the same time, having clarity of your own voice and understanding when to speak up, and because, you know, this is the most powerful thing that we have, which is your own voice and bringing your experience to the table. And so when people are evaluating your work and they're deciding between one candidate or the other, if you don't have a sense of what that person thinks or how they feel about something, just know that, you know, as you get higher up in your career, there are people that don't want you to speak up. They will just signal that in many different ways. And it could be for a variety of reasons. And I think a lot of people know that. And so what is really important is that you have to think through how to balance both working with people, but also making sure that your voice is heard, that people leave those conversations knowing that you do have an opinion, you have a voice that matters. And that's what I would say. I think it just builds on what everyone's been saying that is so important and why they're sitting up here today.
All right, my friends, our time here has come to a close. This is not the last time you'll hear from us, for better or for worse, but building legacy together, our community's journey of strength and resilience. I am so honored to be on this journey with them here on the panel and with you. And so with that, we'll close, if you wouldn't mind giving a hand to our distinguished panel today.
And could you please give it up for Erica, too?
I was just going to say,
Good job, Gautam.
I think it's clear we all work for Erica, so let's. Thanks.
Thank you so much to Erica. It's an honor to work alongside you, and to our esteemed panel for sharing such tremendous inspiration and wisdom. Now, it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Congresswoman Judy Chu, who represents the 27th Congressional District, which includes Pasadena and the West San Gabriel Valley of Southern California. She's the chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, also my former boss. Congresswoman Chu currently serves on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, and also serves on the House Small Business Committee. And with that, her video will get started momentarily. Thank you all.
I'm Congressmember Judy Chu, chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or what we call CAPAC. I'm so happy to be here as part of the White House initiative on Asian American, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders closing ceremony for Heritage Month. First, let me congratulate all of the commissioners for your well-deserved appointments. And let me also thank you for your willingness to help NHPIs across this nation with your policies and actions. This Asian Pacific Heritage Month started on a somber note with the passing of former Secretary Norm Mineta. Norm meant so much to all of us, and the news of his passing sent shockwaves through our community. He was a trailblazer, role model, and a mentor, There are an endless number of stories about AA NHPIs who've been inspired by and directly counseled by him. He was also a co-founder of KPAC and the first chair of the President's Advisory Commission on AA NHPIs under President Clinton. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of everything Norm accomplished and did for us. In more ways than one, Norm laid the foundation for so many of the successes that we have to celebrate this Heritage Month. I know he is proud of how far we've come and all of the positive changes that have occurred during the Biden administration. And we do have so much to celebrate. Last May, in response to the crisis of anti-Asian hate that's impacted our entire AA NHPI community, President Biden signed into law the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, legislation introduced by Representatives Meng and Senator Hirono that directly addresses incidents of anti-Asian hate. And this year, we have worked with the Department of Justice to ensure that it gets fully implemented. In Congress, we passed legislation that addresses anti-Asian hate and xenophobia at its roots by educating our country about how AAPI history is American history. Earlier this year, Representative Doris Matsui's Japanese American Confinement Education Act passed in the House, which provides grants to educate the public on the historical importance of the imprisonment of Japanese Americans during World War II. And last week, Representative Grace Meng's AAPI Museum Study Bill passed in the Senate. It is the first step forward in creating a National Smithsonian Museum of AAPI history and culture, and is now headed to the President's desk to be signed into law. KPAC and the Biden administration have also worked together on other pressing issues that are of the highest concern for the AA and HPI community. We've seen an end to the harmful Trump-era China initiative, the rollback of damaging Trump administration immigration policies like the public charge rule and the Muslim ban, and much needed support for AA and HPI businesses who are bouncing back from the pandemic. There's also been incredible progress in addressing some of the long-standing issues that impact our community. For years, KPAC and AA and HPI organizations have been pushing for increased disaggregation of federal data. So I was overjoyed when I heard the news that President Biden's Equitable Data Working Group announced that the existing federal minimum data standard will be revisited and updated, which will increase access to more detailed data on AA and HPIs. On the language access front, at the start of this month, we received the fantastic news that most home mortgage applicants will now be asked for a language preference, a long-standing priority for our community. This change will help the 1/3 AA and HPIs who are limited English proficient. And it's been great to see language access included in the agency equity plans released last month that President Biden mandated right at the start of his presidency. And let's not forget all the amazing AA and HPI leaders that have joined the Biden administration at the highest levels. This includes the one and only Kamala Harris, the first AAPI Black and woman Vice President of the United States, Ambassador Catherine Tai as United States Trade Representative and WIAPI Co-Chair, Dr. Vivek Murthy as Surgeon General, Julie Su as Deputy Secretary of Labor, Vanita Gupta as Associate Attorney General, Erica Moritsugu as Deputy Assistant to the President and Asian American and Pacific Islander Senior Liaison, and of course, Crystal Kai, my former KPAC Executive Director, as the Director of WIAPI. And that isn't even everything we have to celebrate this Heritage Month. I look forward to all we will continue to accomplish in partnership with the Biden administration and WIAPI in the future. Happy Asian Pacific American Heritage Month.
Thank you for your words and leadership, Congresswoman Chu. Now, I'm not sure about you all, but we could use a little music in here, am I correct? It's a round of applause because we have a special guest. We have Mr. Chung Nyek. He is one of the few living Khmer music masters worldwide who possesses a vast repertoire and command of multiple instruments across various genres. He is the 2004 recipient of the Best Lomax Hawes Award, the NEA National Heritage Fellowship conferred upon one artist who significantly benefited their tradition through teaching and preserving important repertoires. Born in Battambang Province, Cambodia, Chung first studied Khmer music at the age of 10 under his grandfather. Although Chung's grandfather did not want him to become a professional musician, his talent and love for music could not be denied. Consequently, Chung's grandfather set up private apprenticeships for him, the province's best musicians, and by age 12, Chung had mastered the sacred repertoire. After surviving 4 years under the terror of the Khmer Rouge from 1975 to 1979, Chung moved to a Thai refugee camp where he taught music and eventually made his way to Maryland with his wife and 2 children in 1982. Since that time, Chung has been actively advising, teaching, and performing across the United States. With that, big round of applause for Chung. Now, that was an amazing performance by Master Chum Nyuk. One more round of applause for Master Chum Nyuk. So, one of the best ways to see the diversity of the NHPI community is through our clothing. From kimonos to saris, the variety of artistic expression in clothing shows the amazing talent and creativity we must share with the world. We have an amazing fashion show with you featuring Chinese, Indian, and Korean traditional clothing. Some even show a modern take of the traditional items. Now, let's get started with our Pan-Asian American fashion show. So we will get started. Perfect. Give us a bit as we set up. Thanks, all. Chinese Qibao model team now has 12 members, including artists, engineers, doctors, statisticians, and teachers. All of them are over 5'5". In recent years, the program consisted of a series of traditional styles of clothing and music. After training and practice, they performed every year at the Chinese New Year celebrations and various festivals. Natural and generous, confident and artistic, the form is novel and unique, full of appeal. Their mindset is very young, and age is just a number. That's what my mom says as well. Their intention is to show the beauty of Asian women with the beauty of Cheongsam. What they value is the uniqueness of each person with the integration of their clothing and music. The performance on stage captures their artistic conception. So, the models are wearing a mixed tradition and modern qipao. Qipao was a legal dress in the 1920s. Ours is based on color of blue and white porcelain. The dragon pattern originated 7,000 years ago and has developed for nearly 1,000 years. The dragon pattern is a symbol of vitality and glory. The phoenix pattern is also a symbol of happiness and love. And with that, music for the Chinese Qipao show. I will stand here and smile because we'll get started momentarily. Thank you all for being here. I'm excited for this fashion show because it is a unique style of dress and we're here to showcase all types. Round of applause. Thank you all so much. Nice. Up next, we have the Indian Bridal Show. Indian weddings are vibrant, intricately planned, culture-rich festivities full of celebration and tradition. The very essence of Indian wedding ceremony is the physical, spiritual, and emotional union of two people. Today, we are 4 models representing different Indian state brides. Telugu South Indian bride, wearing a beautiful white sari and a pink border, wearing gold jewelry and bindi on the forehead. Ready for the auspicious tying knot ceremony while holding a tender coconut in her hand, which represents the traditional way of carrying Lord's blessing. Number 2, Marathi bride wearing nari, the thani in the nose, Marthari Tushi. She is holding garland on the wedding occasion to exchange the garland with the groom, which represents demonstrating acceptance between the bride and groom. Model number 3, Punjabi bride is the epitome of beauty, elegance, and glamour. The Punjabi wedding dress, called lehenga, is characterized by vibrant colors, impressionable accessories, and well-defined makeup and art katali that has a diya, flowers, sindoor, and sweets to be offered to God while praying for longevity and success of the marriage. Model number 4, the Rajasthani North Indian bride is the epitome of grace and looks spectacular with colorful red embroidered lehenga choli, which is made out of precious stones. Wearing borla is one of the most popular traditional Rajasthani ornaments, with the poki jewelry and colory and Rajasthani umbrellas as a bringer of good fortune and longevity. Round of applause for our wonderful models. Up next, Korean Fashion Show, provided by the Korean Culture and Art of Maryland. The Korean Fashion Show is provided by the Korean Culture and Art of Maryland, a nonprofit 501c organization established in 2006. Since its founding, the KCAMD has been holding 40 to 50 performances every year, including one at the Kennedy Center. Organization is dedicated to sharing the values of traditional Korean culture, art, heritage, and music with people of all ages, backgrounds, through its educational program and events. Model 1 and 2, Timothy and Ashley. These models are wearing wedding attire. Decorations. Jinyos wore vibrant skirts with large wigs, similar to the Western European culture, which defied the fashion norms of the time period. And in some cases, Jinyos wore traditional veiled hats to cover their faces. These type of clothing were very expensive and ordinary people cannot afford them. Round of applause for wonderful models. Now, how are you guys feeling about the program? Excited for what's next? We have some surprises in store because up next, it is my honor to introduce our next speaker, who is a trailblazer in so many ways. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. As a nation's doctor, Surgeon General Murthy helped lay the foundation for a healthier country, relying on the best scientific information available to provide clear, consistent, and equitable guidance and resources for the public, which has been now more important than ever through the pandemic. And with that, a video message from Surgeon General Vivek Murthy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vivek Murthy, and I have the privilege of serving as Surgeon General of the United States. I'm so grateful to the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders for all of their work today and throughout the last month celebrating our community. When I think about what our heritage means to me, when I think about the history, culture, and values that I want this month to help convey to our fellow Americans, I find myself always thinking about my grandfather. He was a poor farmer in India who never finished elementary school, and he lived in deep poverty as he worked to raise 6 children after his wife, my grandmother, died from tuberculosis. Yet despite not having enough to put on the table each night for his children, he still spent a few weeks every year traveling to different nearby villages, raising money for a youth hostel so that children of his village would have a place to study. When other people asked him why he was raising money for other people's kids while his kids were going hungry, he would simply reply, "Those kids are our kids too." My grandfather taught my dad the importance of community and caring for one another, even when that required great sacrifice. Those are the values my dad and mom brought to this country when they immigrated to Miami, Florida. They're the values they modeled for my sister and me when making house calls in the middle of the night to be with a sick child or a grieving widow. We saw my parents treat their patients like family. Those people were our people too. These are the values that inspired me to serve in government, the same values for community and service that we need to strengthen now in our communities across America to lay the foundation for a healthy, strong nation. These are the values I hope to pass on to my children. Community and connection, service and sacrifice. These are the hallmarks of so many Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. These are the values that have guided so many of our families and made our contributions to the United States so rich. I can't think of a better legacy or a stronger heritage than that. And I cannot be more proud to be a member of this community. May we always cherish where we have come from as we celebrate the rich opportunities that lie ahead. And may we always work hard to ensure those opportunities are available for all.
How's that, everybody? He is one of the best. We're grateful for his leadership and grateful he's with this administration. So, up next, we have another surprise guest. And while our next speaker couldn't make it here in person, I actually had a chance to meet her when she was here for the White House Olympic event and asked a few questions earlier this month in the Rose Garden. Born in 2000, Chloe Kim is arguably the greatest female snowboarder of all time. At the 2018 Winter Olympics, she became the youngest woman to win an Olympic snowboarding gold medal when she won gold in the women's snowboarding halfpipe at only 17 years old. At the 2002 Beijing Winter Olympics, she became the first woman to win 2 gold medals in halfpipe, and she is undoubtedly already building her legacy. Chloe?
Hello, my My name is Chloe Kim, and I am here at the White House. I'm so excited to be here and answer a few questions for you guys.
Chloe, what does being Asian American mean to you?
Being Asian American is so important to me. I think that kind of being able to represent both Korea and America at the same time at the Olympics is something that's really important to me because my family is from Korea. It means so much. It's so important to me, and I'm so honored to, be Asian American.
What is one piece of advice you would give to young Asian Americans?
One piece of advice I would give to young Asian Americans is get out there, do what you love, and don't give up. Don't let all the hate and negativity impact you. Just use it as drive and keep going. I know it's really hard at times. I've been through it time and time and time again, but I promise you it gets better. And you'll be laughing at everybody from the top. So yeah, keep going.
Thank you, Chloe, so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Round of applause, Chloe Kim. So I hope you all enjoyed that video message from Chloe, who sends her love to us. And we are in for a treat for our second panel. It's called Building Legacy Through Arts and Culture, as we explore the power of arts, culture, and the humanities. The panel will be moderated by Yao Fen Yo. Yao Fen Yu is an acting director at the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center. She joined the center from Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum, where she was the acting deputy director of curatorial and senior curator and head of product design and decorative arts. Yen Fao has also held curatorial positions at the Detroit Institute of Arts, Fogg Art Museum, Harvard Art Museum, and the University of Michigan Museum of Art and the J. Paul Getty Museum. And with that, warm round of applause for our second panel.
Thank you so much, Howard, for that wonderful generous introduction. It's a privilege to be moderating this panel on building legacy through arts and culture. I'm here in very esteemed company. I'm here with Dr. Maria Rosario Jackson, the chair of the National Endowment for the Arts. Next to her is Shelley Lowe, the chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities. And next to her is Amanda Pungpodi Bakia, a multidisciplinary artist who has been having an incredible career. So for the sake of time, I'm going to just sort of jump right into the questions that we have for our panelists. So I think I want to start first with Chair Jackson. So the National Endowment for the Arts has a long history of supporting Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander artists, arts organizations that work within NHPI communities, and writers. How has the NEA's work evolved as it pertains to equity and access to the arts?
Thank you so much for that question. It's wonderful to be with you all. I would say that the evolution of the work at the Arts Endowment is certainly focused on inclusivity and being able to truly meet mission by acknowledging the diversity of the population that we are obligated to serve. So the focus on inclusivity is really important. As a dimension of that, one of the ideas that I'm advancing in my position as chair is the idea of artful lives for everyone. And the notion of artful lives, I think, is an elastic idea that has within it many paths to people having creative and expressive lives. In addition to that, there's an emphasis on understanding the work at the intersection of arts and other fields. And I think that that's critical to our being able to make progress with inclusivity. So arts and health, for example, or arts and community development. There are many different policy areas and areas of practice that intersect with the arts. If we are going to have artful lives, if we are going to meet the goals of the society, the just and equitable society that we aspire to, I think the arts are central to helping us get unstuck. How do we reframe things? How do we retool in order to do the work of repair and growth? And I think the arts are central to that.
Thank you so much, Chair Jackson. Chair Lowe, the National Endowment for the Humanities recently awarded the Association for Asian Studies a $1 million grant, $1 million, not $1, to support the project striving for diversity, equity, and inclusion in Asian studies, humanities grants for Asian studies scholars, which is an initiative to provide opportunities for career development and research projects for Asian studies professionals on the periphery of Asian studies. The grant was awarded through the NEH's Sustaining the Humanities Through American Rescue, SHARP program. Can you tell us how that project aligns with NEH's mission, as well as your vision to expand NEH's support of AA, NHPI communities and institutions? And if you have other initiatives in the works, we would love to hear about them.
Yes, thank you very much. Yates Shelley Lo Yanishia, Belagana Neshle, Nanastasia Tudney, Bashichi, Belagana Dashache, Do Tabaha Dashanale, Locantiel de Nasha. Hello, everybody. My name is Shelley Lowe. I'm chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities. I am Navajo, and I'm originally from Ganado, Arizona. I do want to say talofa, hafade, aloha to my indigenous relatives from the Pacific Islands. I studied real hard to make sure I could say that. So, and I want to thank you for that question, because I think that the grant that we gave to support faculty and scholars in Asian American studies is very, very a good example of what we do in the humanities to make sure that we are reaching diverse voices, that we are telling diverse stories, and that we are making sure to show what has built this country, the foundations of this country, which are narratives that we often don't always hear and aren't always taught. There are a lot of parts of our narrative, our national narrative, that we are just not aware of, that we don't know. And a lot of these go to the impact of others, right, in this country, the impact of our Pacific Islander individuals, the impact of our communities, Asian American communities, Hispanic communities. And the Sustaining Humanities through American Rescue Plan grant allowed subawards to go to 30 individual scholars. And these are individuals who are adjunct faculty, these are junior scholars, these are scholars working outside of the professoriate, allowing them to do research in Asian American studies, allowing them to get professional development, allowing them to have mentoring opportunities, because these individuals, particularly in these types of positions, are the ones that are most vulnerable in terms of job security, in terms of being able to do the important work and the research that they do, particularly through the pandemic. So our funding really went to sustain the work that they do, but sustain sometimes their positions and making sure that they could continue on through those couple of years through the pandemic and even longer. And this is really pointing to some of the work that we also do with our state and jurisdictional humanities councils. We give funding to American Samoa Humanities Council, the Gahan Humanities Council, Northern Mariana Islands Humanities Council, and of course the Hawaiian Humanities Council. And they're doing a wonderful array of programs and projects that are really rooted in education, they're rooted in research, they're rooted in public programs, very specific to the histories and the cultures of those territories, and very much in light of teaching youth, teaching community members, having community members talk to each other and learn from each other, and even taking historical oral narratives and translating them and putting them into conversation with contemporary narratives and contemporary stories. And it's all about making sure that we are increasing the knowledge that we have about communities in this country, the diversity of this country, and the impact and everything that we have done collectively as diverse people for this country.
Thank you so much for that update. Well, speaking about community and stories, Amanda, you recently unveiled Gather, a series of monuments and rituals at Lincoln Center in New York, which I had the privilege of seeing on this past Sunday. I also had the chance in April to see your mural, Very Asian Feelings. in the exhibition Making Home, Artists and Immigration, which is currently on view at the Asia Society in Texas and Houston. And I was hoping that you could speak to how you see the arts playing a role in community empowerment and healing and self-determination.
Thank you so much for that question. So I will just share some examples from my own practice. I think in order to heal, we must first feel seen and heard. And art allows for what we might feel inside to come to light and be revealed. I think so often AA NHPIs are looked at as perhaps unemotional and cold, and art can really reveal those emotions that might not make it to the surface and are hidden. Art can also show us ourselves. You know, AA NHPIs are often erased from media and culture, and art can establish that we exist. It can assert that we have been here and are here to stay. It can remind us that we belong in every space and that the richness and diversity of our experiences matter and should be celebrated. My public art campaign that I created with the New York City Commission on Human Rights, I Still Believe in Our City, when that first went up, COVID was peaking in New York City, and already the xenophobia and hate was impacting our API communities, and unfortunately has stayed and remained elevated for the past 2 years. So I decided that I would blanket the entire city with dignified and diverse portraits of Asian Americans to show that we're not going to take it laying down and that we don't stand alone. People told me that these defiant expressions on these portraits and the phrases I used, "I am not your scapegoat," "I didn't make you sick," "We belong here," "This is our home too," gave them courage, power, a sense of safety and belonging. And I actually borrowed this language from something I'd written in my notebook after I experienced a bias incident on the subway. So when I wanted to share that, you know, there isn't just one Asian American story, and that there are still limiting and narrow stereotypes levied against us, and that, you know, we really need to share the expansiveness of AA NHPIs. I wrote, "We too are America. Amplify Asian voices. When will we be welcome, not just included?" I've also seen how art can promote healing when we invite people to share their stories. I think when people are moved by art that really embraces vulnerability, they too believe that they can be vulnerable. So with my installation, May We Know Our Own Strength, that I created over 6 weeks in an empty storefront, I invited New Yorkers to lay down their burdens. And I painstakingly printed and molded each story into delicate sculptures. So New Yorkers were able to release their untold sins, secrets, and suffering, and see their stories transformed like alchemy into art. And it's this disclosure and transformation of our traumas that mirrors what we're all trying to do, which is reshape our scars into something new. And I think art is such a powerful way to remind everyone that we can still bloom and grow after trauma. And I've just delved even deeper into participatory installations in my most recent work. And I am using rituals that are drawn from my Southeast Asian heritage to invite audiences to process our grief and our pain and our uncertainty and really just ground us. So each one of my installations up now at Lincoln Center invokes a particular emotion. So for example, with Islands in the Sea, I am conducting a ritual that allows people to release their sorrows by channeling them into a vessel that they then exchange with a healing partner and float onto Paul Milstein Pool. And as we gather around and look at our vessels floating in this pool, bumping up against each other, we have this moment of community catharsis that's just really so profound. It's incredibly moving to see people being so vulnerable, strangers just opening themselves up to each other, weeping openly and holding each other in public space. So I think that when we invite audiences to take part in experiences that tap into hope and joy, it's soul lifting, it's transformational. And when we give people actions that can shape their experiences, we really grant them the power of self-determination. Art can just really help us act on the world and on ourselves.
Well, speaking of narratives, of the personal, and I wonder if the panelists would mind sharing their personal stories as to what drew them to a career in the arts. Dr. Jackson, would you like to take us on that journey with you?
Happy to do that. So my commitment to the arts started at home. Neither parent was an artist nor a wealthy arts patron, but both looked to the arts as a resource to make sure that my brother and I were proud of who we were. So in some ways, is African American Mexican is my background. And I think my parents were concerned that we would face narratives that would harm us, frankly. And they looked to the arts to offer these other ways of understanding who we were. So this idea of control over one's own narrative on your own terms was really important to me early on, because I saw them seek that out. As I progressed in my career, I went into urban planning and community development, but with the sensibility that arts and culture and design had to be part of what made for a healthy, opportunity-rich environment. So the sensibility has been there, and even though the attention to arts and culture from a community development and urban planning perspective isn't always common, I stuck with it. I was discouraged from it, actually, originally. I had colleagues that thought I was off mission. It's like, why are you doing this arts and culture stuff if you care about eradicating racism, addressing poverty, looking at inequity, et cetera? And it was, in my gut, I knew that was the work that I was supposed to be doing, and I persisted in it. But it wasn't instilled, to some extent, isn't always thought about as core to healthy places, and I think it is. I think we are absolutely making a mistake if we don't think that it is. So over time, I found the words to be able to explain what was in my gut. And it's, if you look around the world and throughout the ages in strategies to disempower, the first thing that one tampers with is the ability to make meaning, to have control over your own narrative, to ask questions, to make sense of the world. And these are the things that we do through the arts and the humanities also. So if these are so important that they have to be tampered with to oppress, why don't we understand them as critical to our building up, to our strengthening? So it's that impulse that I continue to carry into my work from the various perches that I've had the opportunity or the privilege, the blessing to contribute. And in this case, in this particular role as chair, that continues.
And we are so very fortunate to have you chairing. It's so important, such an important institution.
I think my own journey was through a career in higher education, and thinking about humanities in particular and what it means to come into a career in the humanities, I didn't really think a lot that, oh, I do humanities, until I really thought about it and thought, oh, I do humanities. That's all I do. It's actually all we all do, whether we think about it or not. I grew up very, very immersed in Navajo culture and Navajo art, and we didn't think too much about art because it was just so much a part of our life and how we lived, what we saw, what we made use of every single day. It wasn't until I was removed from that strong foundation into a university setting that was predominantly white that I started to realize how rich and how powerful my Navajo culture was, and how much of a foundation the humanities of my culture was for me, and how much I had to think about the fact that it was not present, it wasn't available in the university system. In fact, it was never talked about. It was something that people didn't even know about. And that dichotomy of how can I have so much understanding and cultural power from where I grew up and my heritage and my culture, and individuals I'm around, 90% of them, don't even know that that exists, don't even have any understanding of that history or that knowledge. And then to get really upset and angry when you start to learn that, oh, this is not being taught, but it's not just my culture being taught. It's multiple cultures. It's all these cultures within the United States that aren't being taught, that I wasn't learning about, and the important parts that they play in not just how I live my life, but how my children are going to live their lives, how we make our decisions within the United States. And then working with students who would get to that same realization at a certain point to say, hey, wait, I'm really angry. I was never taught this. Why wasn't I ever taught this? And then having to explain to them maybe why they weren't taught this and how they could come back into their own cultural understandings, but be open to learning about others and be open to understanding that some people might do it differently, and that's okay. And we can think about how we do things the same and similarly, but it's okay to keep going on and kind of relying on your own cultural knowledge, your own humanities base, and allow others to have their humanities base at the same time, and still be a flourishing society, and still be populations that can come together and work together towards the similar goals. And then to really kind of think that it's just so heartbreaking and sad to know that so much of your history and so much history of other individuals and cultures in this country is just erased. It's not taught. It's not out there. It's not something that people have even been introduced to. And so understanding how do we create opportunities to make sure that those things can flourish, that we can have research, that we can start to find out what does this mean, how does this culture deal with it, how do we learn from this, how is it different from my own culture, and how do we take that and have a much stronger understanding of diversity in the country. I think those are very large tasks that we have to be constantly thinking about. I love the work that she's done because you see it kind of come together in like a visual piece, right? I always tell people the humanities are the foundation of art. Through the art, you can kind of feel humanities, right? You see humanities, you taste it, you hear it, and you get a better sense of the diversity of humanities through the art that you see on a regular basis. So it's really coming down to how do we support the building of that humanities foundation, because it's going to flourish into so many other great things.
I've always loved making things, even as a small child. And I found a refuge, really, in the process of creating. Refuge that I didn't feel, or a safe space that I didn't feel growing up as the child of Thai and Indonesian immigrants in the American South in my day-to-day life. So art was my sanctuary. And I was drawn to a career in the arts because I want to make sure that marginalized communities celebrate their richness and diversity. I want to make sure that our pain and our trauma is transmuted into something that is joyful, something that reminds us of our power. And, you know, I've always loved bringing people together, While I definitely love experimenting and holding up in my studio, playing with color and texture and different materials, where I think my art comes to life is in how it interfaces with audiences and how my art can help people process their emotions, really sit with them, feel many emotions at once, and ultimately heal. I think I became an artist because I wanted to find those untold stories. I wanted to unearth those little-known histories. I wanted to share them with the world in a way that was impossible to ignore. And I wanted to convene people and help them feel seen and heard. You know, I'm part of this fight against oppression and injustice, but instead of being armed with a weapon, I've got my paintbrush, a needle, my voice. And especially now, when our world feels just so heavy and uncertain, I know for sure that this is definitely the work I'm meant to be doing.
Well, I can't think of a better note to end our discussion on about with thinking about wielding a brush to build a legacy. So I want to thank you all for being here with me today and for participating and for sharing your insights and wisdom. Thank you. And I think up next, we have remarks from Senator Mazie Hirono. So I will leave it to Howard to let us know he's the driver's seat. Thank you, Howard.
Round of applause to the panel. So great, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, of course. Thank you all for these amazing panelists showing us how integral art is to our culture. And special thanks to Yao Fen for moderating such a lively discussion. Now, as we talk about building legacy, please join me in welcoming one of our great trailblazers, Senator Mazie Hirono. Senator Mazie Hirono was elected to Senate in 2012 and sworn in as Hawaii's first female senator and the country's first Asian American woman senator. She led the passage of the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act in the Senate and was signed as law by President Biden 1 year ago. She is a fierce leader for 8 NHPI communities. Big warm applause for Senator Mazie Hirono.
Do you have a stand? I'm a little short for this. Oh, thank goodness this adjusts.
That's good.
Much better, because just seeing the top of my head is not a good look for a senator. Aloha, everybody. It's really great to be here. And Howard, thank you very much for introducing me, and for all of you who are with us today. It's been a whole month almost of focusing on APIA communities and issues, and I think it's really great. I do want to begin by acknowledging the horrific shootings in Uvalde earlier this week, and Buffalo and Laguna Woods earlier this month. And I am horrified and heartbroken for each of these communities and our nation. It's been nearly 10 years since Sandy Hook, and still our children are getting gunned down in our schools. Our people are being killed in churches, grocery stores. The easy access to guns, to weapons of war, is what makes our country the outlier country of all developed nations. We cannot wait any longer to pass the 2 common sense gun safety bills that the House of Representatives has already passed, which would expand background checks and help prevent senseless deaths. Okay. And 90% of Americans are with us on this, and we will keep fighting to get this done, including by eliminating the Senate filibuster. Right. These tragic attacks are a painful reminder of the racism, hatred, and violence we face and the urgent need to do something more to combat them. I'm proud that Asian and Pacific Island Americans, leaders like you, are helping lead the fight to build a more just and safe country. I'd like to thank the Biden administration for explicitly including Native Hawaiians in the White House initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. It's so important to have more APIAs, including Native Hawaiians, making decisions and positions of power, including in the U.S. House and Senate. Where a year ago, as noted, we worked hard to enact the COVID-19 hate crimes bill, one of the few bipartisan bills, standalone bills, that passed last year. And 1 year again on Friday, we stood beside President Biden, Vice President Harris, colleagues, and many of you as the COVID-19 hate crimes bill was signed into law at the White House. And this bill has provided the federal government and our communities with important tools and support to combat hate crimes and hate incidents. Last Friday, I joined Attorney General Garland in marking the 1-year anniversary of the signing of the COVID hate crimes bill. The DOJ announced additional steps to combat hate crimes and incidents, and one of the steps really important that they are taking is to establish the Department of Justice's first ever language access coordinator. And we know that we represent a community that comes from 40 different countries, over 100 different languages, and one of the barriers to reporting of hate crimes and incidents is a language barrier. So the DOJ is appointing their first ever language coordinator. So this makes it easier for every person, regardless of the language they speak, to report hate crimes and hate incidents. And as we work to implement this bill and to move our country away from xenophobia, let us not forget our history, from the Chinese Exclusion Act to Executive Order 9066, which led to the internment of over 120,000 Asians, Japanese Americans during World War II, and more recently, the xenophobic, racist policies and rhetoric of the previous administration. This history of racism and discrimination shapes the APIA experience today. Last week, I brought Congresswoman Grace Ming's bill to the Senate floor, and this bill establishes a commission to study the creation of a National Museum of APIA History and Culture. And you just heard from some of our cultural practitioners and artists. An API History Museum would allow Americans from every walk of life, every race, religion, and ethnic background to better understand the impact of our history and our legacy of racism and discrimination and what impact that has had on our communities. So the bill passed by unanimous consent. It's not that often when bills pass by unanimous consent, by the way. All that happens is somebody from the other side comes to the floor and says, I object. So this bill now heads to the president's desk for his signature. So in addition to the exciting prospect of a national museum, it is clear that teaching of API history in our public schools is an important corollary to provide an accurate picture of the challenges and contributions of our communities and how we are part of the fabric of American history. And I introduced a bill that helps to encourage the teaching of our history in our schools. I think this is, as I said, a really important corollary, even as we fight against some of these attempts to remove the teaching of so much of the history of our country. Building understanding is critical in this moment as we work to combat still the distressing rise of anti-hate crimes against our communities. And I'm so impressed and grateful for everything that our community is doing, all of you, your leadership, And we are fighting back, and I'm really especially impressed with the activism of our young people. For example, one young girl I've been particularly impressed by is Mina Fedor. Mina is in middle school in California, and when I talked with her, she was vacationing at that time with her family, and I asked her what gave rise to your activism, and she told me that when she saw a man come up to her mother, who's Asian, and cough in her face, she saw that as a hate incident. And Mina decided to do something about it. Mina launched API Rising, a collective of middle school activists who are devoted to uplifting our community and stop racist hate. So Mina was named a finalist for the Time Magazine Kid of the Year this year. So I tell you, yes. So she did a rally, and she really got it. She understood from her experience that this is something that she could do something about. So Mina's activism gives me hope, and so do all of you here today. And this is a moment to show the strength of our communities. We all know that APIAs are the fastest growing ethnic groups. So candidates, officials, and others are reaching out to us. They want to hear from us. They want to work with us. So while API Heritage Month is almost over, our work to strengthen our communities goes on 365 days a year. And we must remain vigilant to the threats that we face and the need to protect ourselves, our communities, and to join in solidarity with other communities, other peoples who are marginalized and discriminated against. We are in this together. Our collective diversity is our strength. So let's keep on moving on, and I will stand with you, and perseverance, to quote Ketanji Jackson, perseverance is what's required of all of us. Mahalo nui loa, aloha. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hirono. Another round of applause for our trailblazing senator. Thank you for your powerful remarks. We're very honored that you're serving us. Now, up next, we have our closing performance. We have Falu. Falu is a Grammy award-winning, internationally recognized artist known for her rare ability to seamlessly blend a signature modern inventive style with the formidable Indian classically trained vocal talent. In her early years in Bombay, singer Falu, also known as Falguni Shah, was trained rigorously in the Jaipura musical tradition in the Benares style of Thumri under the legendary Kamudi, Munshi, and semi-classical music from Uday Mazumdar. She later continued studying under the late Sarangi vocal master Ustad Sultan Khan, and later the legendary Kishori Amankar. Now for this, we want everybody to be engaged. So as Falu is performing, please clap along, show your enthusiasm for our wonderful and very exciting closing ceremony singer, Falu.
Namaste, everybody. How's everyone doing? ओ लाल मेरी पत रखियो भला झूले लालने सिंदड़ी दा से फड़दा सखी शाबाश कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अली दम दम बे अंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अली दम दम बे अंदर ओ लाल मेरी ओ लाल मेरी हिंद शिंद पीड़ा तेरी नौबत बाजे नाम अली बेड़ा पार लगा झूले लालण सिंतड़ी दा से पढ़दा सखी शाबाश कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अली दम दम बे अंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अली दम दम बे अंदर चार चराग तेरे वर्ण हमेशा चार चराग तेरे वर्ण हमेशा चार चराग तेरे वर्ण हमेशा पंजवा में बारण आई भला झूले लालण सिंतड़ी दा से पढ़दा सखी शाबाश कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अली दम दम बे अंदर 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 दमादम 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 दम 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 Thank you so much. Namaste and thank you for having me.
How was that, everybody? Warm hand of applause. So Falu traveled all the way from New York to be here with us today. Now, beautiful performance. And a final thanks to you all, performers, speakers, and those watching in person or at home for joining us today and celebrating Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. For those of you in the audience here, we have a special proclamation for you on your way out. Please make sure it's a hard copy of the President's proclamation of our celebrating our month. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you at the next one. Happy Heritage Month, everybody.